New today for the second time, a federal judge denies Marilyn Mosby's request to modify her home detention.
Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost joins us live in studio to break down the latest filing. Mackenzie, we know you've been following this case from the beginning. What are you learning now?
Yeah, Mary Kay, Marilyn Mosby has been asking to modify her sentence so she can travel around the state of Maryland anytime in this new role of Director of Global Strategic Planning. Now, this job is with an undisclosed company in California. But in these new court documents, Judge Lydia Kay Griggsby denied Mosby's latest request for a curfew. She's also raising questions about this job. Judge Griggsby says Mosby has yet to provide salary information to her probation officer, and at this point, the judge says she's not even sure if Mosby's job is lawful or legitimate. Now, Mosby's legal team has yet to file a response to this latest development. And joining us live now to talk about this is Baltimore area attorney Kurt Nachtman. Thanks for joining us, Kurt. You've been following this case for several years alongside us now. Is it common for a defendant not to provide this information, like salary details, to their probation agent?
No, it's certainly not common. In fact, if I had a client who came into my office, the first thing I would say is trust and verify. In other words, you should bring in, something on letterhead indicating that you have a job offer. It should have some sort of information with regard to sort of a loose salary guidelines, even if it's not a salary position, even if it's some sort of commission-based position, which if she's opening sort of this new location for Glom Global, and it's not salary-based, it's commission-based, there should be some information about that that's available. And really, it's very curious. And clearly, the judge called her out on it, and parole and probation called her out on it, that perhaps they think this is not a real job.
And we know that this is the second time that Marilyn Mosby has requested to modify this sentence. The judge is also saying she's concerned about Mosby's ability to adjust to supervision. What do you think that means?
Yeah, so reading between the lines a little bit, you have to wonder if the report that probation sent the judge had some indicia that perhaps she wasn't where she was supposed to be when she was supposed to be there, which is maybe the judge sort of saying, hey, by the way, you're not complying with your conditions here, and I'm going to subtly let you know that you're not complying with your conditions here in a sort of a verbal fashion to say, hey, by the way, you still have to stay home and get permission to leave your house when you need to.
And we know that Marilyn Mosby's defense team argues that she needs to be able to travel whenever she wants for this job. That's why they're asking for this curfew instead of having to ask for permission each time she leaves under the current guidelines of this. At this point, given your experience, how much leeway or how long will the judge allow this to go on before something perhaps changes with the sentence overall?
Well, I mean, she'd have to violate something in order to have an adjustment of her sentence. So I don't, in absent sort of an express violation of her terms and conditions of probation, I don't see the judge issuing a retake warrant for Miss Mosby. However, it's very common to ask a judge for a probationer for some sort of accommodation for work. But it's also very common for the lawyer to provide documentation associated with it. I cannot think of the last time that I modified someone's sentence for a work or a travel restriction to be lifted and I didn't provide appropriate documentation. And so, the judge, frankly, has given Ms. Mosby a fair amount of leeway. And really, the lawyers involved are all experienced enough to know that they just need a letter from the company on letterhead indicating what Ms. Mosby needs to do for work in order to get this issue resolved.
All right, we'll see what Marilyn Mosby's defense team says in response to this. I just checked the federal docket before talking to you. Nothing has been filed yet, but we'll keep our eyes peeled. Kurt Nachtman, thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks, Mackenzie.
Joining us live now to talk about this is trial attorney Jeremy Eldredge. Jeremy, thanks for joining us. You followed along with this legal saga for many years with us now. Why do you think Mosby and her team have yet to provide the probation office with that salary information about the job?
I think the reason that Mosby's legal defense team has yet to provide information to the court is simply because the job lacks documentation or corroboration. It sounds like a consulting job where there are not clearly defined parameters. The salary in and itself may not be clearly defined. But in a normal situation, it should be incredibly easy for a criminal defendant through their attorney to provide payroll information, information regarding travel, what their hours are. So this is very odd, just because if you're going to approach a federal judge about modifying a sentence or even pretrial release conditions, you're always going to have that lined up before going to the judge in the first place.
And we know her legal team, this is not their first case. They're very experienced attorneys. At this point, given what we know in the questions raised by the judge, is there any concern or legitimacy to the questions raised about whether this job is legitimate?
First of all, it's important to remember the attorneys are the messengers. There are a lot of times, even in my representation of people, where the client wants you to approach the judge and you may not have proper documentation, but you're doing what the client requests. So I seriously doubt that this is the inefficacy of the attorney. In fact, I think it's probably quite the opposite. Ms. Mosby had the opportunity to provide this documentation, probably became impatient and wanted it submitted and didn't think of it as a big deal. The problem is obviously the court's response, which is now we also know that she violated her release. We know with the 12B, which is that supplemental report, now we know that Marilyn Mosby failed to even update her probation officer about her whereabouts. So that is even more of concern. And I doubt this is the last time that Judge Griggsby is going to see a request made by her, but she's growing impatient.
Well, and speaking of growing impatient, we know that the judge strayed from what the federal prosecutors asked for in terms of the sentence. Marilyn Mosby did not get prison time like the prosecutors requested. At this point, do you think the judge's patience will run out with Marilyn Mosby and all of these requests and the questions and concerns?
I think it could run out very quickly if Marilyn Mosby continues to flout the judge's rulings and potentially violate the terms of her release. I think the rubber will certainly hit the road, and she could see that home detention revoked and be confined, but she would really have to violate those conditions. Secondarily, what you're not even asking is, we're coming to the end of a presidential term. Could Marilyn Mosby be reaching out to the president's office asking for some level of a pardon? And does that become even more difficult with her actions and continued being highlighted in the press? And that's problematic in and of itself.
Yeah, there are still a lot of unanswered questions. We'll have to wait and see what her defense team says in response to this ruling from Judge Griggsby. Jeremy Eldridge, thanks for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you, as always.
I'm Kai Jackson. Thank you for watching. Here's another video to watch. Also, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel.